Welcome in, everybody. Welcome in. No matter what time of the day or night it is a great time to be a Gamecock. I'm Tony, here with Adam, and this is Ladies First. We were raised as gentlemen, so we know that. We are talking Gamecock women's basketball, coming off a very impressive series of wins. Easily downed the Iowa State Cyclones and then took it to Purdue. They were Purdue, Adam, or they were Purdue, whatever you want to put it. They almost doubled up their score the Saturday after Thanksgiving. So this is just going to be a nice positive podcast day, a really good shift in focus for the program as we get back to basics and really, of course, shooting the basketball well. And this is going to be something that is key because we have two top 10 matchups now to follow the Thanksgiving and that Saturday to follow fun. We got Duke coming to town here to Colonial Life Arena. Then we're going down to meet TCU. And just more of the positive vibes and everything getting settled with South Carolina. It couldn't come at a better time.
Yeah, I think that what we mentioned it on our last episode, we needed a get-right game after UCLA.
Getting right.
And I don't think you could get any more right than the last two games they've had. It seemed like everything was working in all facets. Off to fast starts, consistent shots, and I know what everyone was worried about, consistent minutes for our stars. So it was everyone getting on the same page again and just in time for this two-game stance.
It still just comes down to a team effort standpoint. You still want to see your best players get a decent amount of minutes, but there's still just going to be a lot of pieces of the pie that can be split up and have to go around. So there's still going to be a potential for even star players that South Carolina has, the big concern for Wiley, to get only 19, 20 minutes, but that's still a good amount of time. It's a lot better than 3 and 4. So this is going to be something where it's just a matter of seeing who is settling in, who is knocking down those shots, what combinations are going to work, and this is still going to be a factor that has to be thought about when you start to face bigger and more talented teams. Now, South Carolina is still up on that pedestal. Just looking around the scope of women's basketball, seeing some of the dominoes that have already fallen. Notre Dame, there's a top 5 team. They already have 2 losses now, so they are going to be having a shake-up in the polls here. They just lost to Utah recently, so you're already starting to see some teams in the top 10 fall, so this is going to be something where it might be setting themselves apart from the pack. South Carolina's still up there. UCLA now being the team to beat. UConn also seemingly very, very solid with their star Paige Beckers. So this is all going to be just coming down to a point of, all right, where are you in accordance to these other top 10 programs? Because as we get into the breakdown, I still want to go over some of these stats from Purdue and going back to Iowa State. But Duke is going to be a really tough team, but I would imagine, even though it's going to be a late game, Adam, coming up this Thursday, it's at 9 o'clock, nationally televised game, but it's nice to have the students back, just a lot of folks that are trying to, get to the games. That's what's one of the big knocks, too. I'll throw that in there as well with women's basketball. You don't have that organized student section like you see for men's games. So even though, students are back, everyone still has, the opportunity to buy seats. That's one big difference between the women's game and the men's game. There's not a designated student section, or I'm not sure if there's colleges that have it. I haven't really seen it too much around the sport, but it is nice to just see, more people around for Columbia. It's in between Thanksgiving and Christmas, so you're going to be having that place rocking. You're going to have, of course, a lot of the positivity. You're going to have a lot of the energy, and South Carolina is ready to really stake their claim, go on a run, and just continue to keep this momentum chugging forward after that UCLA loss.
Yeah, and I think another thing that can go into that student energy is the ending of college football regular season. Now, at least when I was in college, once football season ended, I wanted to go to sporting events. I would go to anything I could. You have one of the best women's basketball teams in the country. I think you're going to see a lot of... I feel like you'll have more support now.
I'm hopeful.
Now that you're in this dry period, now that football is sadly coming to an end.
Yeah, and you might have to get some upper deck tickets. You might have to get some resale tickets, but either way, they're definitely worth shelling out a little extra money. And, sometimes you want to wait till game day or the day before, ticket prices will go down because there's just a lot of folks that live in this area or around that have season tickets. So when we are going to this point of, all right, trying to be able to find a place to sit and even get seats, it's tough to come by, and that's what happens when you have a really good and talented team and a show people want to go and see. And speaking of this show that South Carolina puts on, they certainly did put one on for Turkey Day Thursday, as we anticipated, Adam. Now, they blew our expectations out of the water. I thought it was going to be closer to a 15-point win. You thought 10-point win. How about a 40-point win over the Cyclones? And that's pretty impressive when you're seeing that over a top 20 opponent. I don't care what sport you're looking at. And that was really nice to see, and it was just spread around between that game and the Purdue game. And that's just something I keep going back to. It is going to be about minutes being spread around. I want to make sure they're being spread around fairly, but you are going to see a series of players, a variety of our great team just chipping in points in a lot of different ways. Just looking across the board here, I have the points pulled up from this game. Chloe Kitts, she put in 15 minutes. Sanayim Fagan, 16 minutes. Bree Hall, 15. Pow Pow, 23. She put in a little bit more. But, all the numbers are very much similar in terms of point production. Pow Pow put in 7. Raven Johnson, 6 points. I will say, really nice game here. This was a really nice game. This was a breakout game in the regular season, Adam, for a freshman from Camden, Joyce Edwards. She had 11 rebounds, and she had 13 points.
That was one thing I really noticed about that game.
Double-double.
Was how great they were in comparison to UCLA of getting those rebounds, just getting the ball back. It was something I noticed, and with 11 there, that's a big contributor. That defense is a big part of every sport.
Yeah.
And getting those rebounds, that's going to give you obviously more opportunities. And another thing I noticed was just forcing the turnovers. It seemed like they were just pressuring Iowa State at every second of that game. It felt like they were making them make mistakes.
And they started out hot.
That's what they've been lacking. Has been starting out hot. And once they get going against a good team, Iowa State, they're ranked. They're not just going to lay down for anybody. You start out hot when you are one of the best teams in the country. It's on full display what they can do.
You could just coast. You could just put it on cruise control once you reach that mountaintop and you force the other team to try and climb up to that mountaintop, because it's a good way to go about it. You're still going to have ebbs and flows. You can have teams that can go on a run in basketball games, but once you're starting to build a double-digit lead, it is so hard to chip away at that, especially if you are just a really good team. And it's not a fluke. Like, you could watch basketball games all day. There's so much college basketball, so much that you can digest between the women's and the men's game. There's games all over the place, all the time, on TV, on streaming. But more often than not, if you see a top 10 program that has a double-digit lead, very, very rarely are you going to see them give up that lead. Now, it's definitely more likely to see, more of a fluky game where an unranked team is playing, say, a top 10 team, and they happen to have a good first half, up 12, 14 points maybe. That could whittle away, because eventually you're still going to have the potential for that talent to take back over and more of that ranked team to be able to seize hold of the game and come out in the end after, whether it be 4 quarters or 2 halves. And that's just something, of course, that was still easier for South Carolina, because they built that lead, they dominated from the beginning, and then they were just on cruise control. And it was a great all-over game from this team. Also, just taking a look here, Ashlyn Watkins had 8 rebounds, but, 6 points. Everyone was really spread out. It was nice to see Full Wiley with 21 solid minutes. She could have shot a little bit better. I definitely want to see her hit some more shots. She was only 3 for 10 on field goals, so she definitely needs to clean it up a little bit from the floor. But she still put in 8 points, and that's just something that was all around just put in. It was a fantastic all-around game. Everybody chipping in, everyone seemingly happy, and doing the best they can to enjoy Thanksgiving together, because that's their family, the team being their family, and of course anyone other than actual family members that were in attendance for the Fort Myers tip-off. It was a great get-right game, and they just really carried that momentum into the Purdue game, and they derailed the Boilermakers right away.
Yeah, I was surprised to see just how dominant this team answered. I had that question, how does this team respond to a loss? Turns out it might have just lit a fire under them, because they got right straight away.
Right away.
Didn't miss a beat. I don't think they could have had a better answer to that UCLA loss than Iowa State dominating them, and then Purdue just absolute dismantling of the game. I mean, as close to 100 points as you're going to get, but just great to see that they did not get in their own head about it, and if they got in their own head, it was for the right reasons, to just make sure everything from the players to the coaching end, everything worked, and it looked like they immediately cleaned up their mistakes. Not getting the rebounds, not being able to get these shots off, shots just not sinking when you think they should. It all started going their way these last two games, and that's just the kind of team it is. You kind of get them down, knock them down a bit, they're going to get back up, and they're a powerhouse for a reason. They're not going anywhere.
No, and this just is further proving something to me. I had a short discussion with some fans on social media about what went wrong in that UCLA game, and it's really not to the point of there being a big differential in the skill level with their players and our players. Like, this is still just something that is proving to me that height just really might be that factor, might really be that key difference to what could stop South Carolina from making another run at a title. It literally might just come down to a ruler, just to having a little bit more height under the basket like UCLA did, because just trying to see how we're playing some of these games against very good caliber opponents. Even with Purdue, that's a respectable Big Ten program, and you almost doubled them up around a 50 to 100 point split, just about. And even with Iowa State blowing them out as well, and their star player, Audie Crooks, she only put in 13 points, still respectable for a game. She was 5 for 11, but held her in check. She put in the most minutes for Iowa State at 32. And everyone else, their second leading scorer, this was really where the lockdown defense was. But Addie Brown, their second leading scorer, she put in 23 minutes, and she didn't get to play too much of a full game because she was doing so poorly, and South Carolina had her locked down. She was 0 for 7 from the field and put in 0 points. So when you do that to a second leading scorer on a ranked program, that's definitely going to put them into a fit, and that's just one big reason why they were able to dispatch Iowa State so easily, because they were trying to rely more on their bench, and their bench poured in 2 points. 2 points from Iowa State for that game, so not too helpful.
Great. Yeah, I don't think you're gonna be relying on anybody with those kind of numbers.
No, so that was that was it. One bucket from their bench. That was all for that entire game. So goes to show you why that was a blowout. And just a short little shout out to Purdue. Still a solid program. Be interested to see how they do the rest of the season. And Destiny Lombard, their senior guard, really, really talented, and she put in, I believe, 24 points. She was the main factor of any kind of production from Purdue, almost putting in half their points alone. South Carolina had a little bit of a tough time corralling her, and she was 4 for 5 from three-point range. So definitely they're a bit of a star for them. But the rest of the team, of course, could not keep pace, and South Carolina pretty much had everyone else locked down in that game. So, yes, Iowa State Cyclones dispatched. Boilermakers, their train easily derailed. And now we got the Blue Devils top 10 matchup again.
Another time. You're going to be saying that a lot this season.
Coming to town, yes, Colonial Life Arena. That is going to be a fun one. Really looking forward to that. And that's going to be this Thursday. That is this Thursday, December 5th, 9 p.m. Yeah, late game on ESPN, though. Got that national TV audience for those who feel like staying up a little bit later on a Thursday. I'm hoping a lot of people are going to catch that game. And why not, right? Battle of the Carolinas going on between North and South, with Duke coming here, and should be a really, really good one. And I'm hopeful that even though it's going to be late, you're still really getting a big crowd to be packed in to Colonial Life, because they need it, especially for a game like this. I want to see that place really hype. I wish I was planning to go. I really wanted to go to that game, but unfortunately for me, Adam, I have work the next morning at 4 a.m.
Oh, dear.
So I sadly will not be able to make this one, so I got to wait to go to my first home game of the season. Been very all over the place in my schedule, sadly.
I've had the reverse issue, is that I don't get out of work until 9 that night.
That's right. Yeah, so it's
unfortunate scheduling.
It really is. Sad. It's okay. It's all right, because we're going to talk about the game. But hopefully some of the people listening, a good handful of y'all out there, will be able to attend this great matchup. And this is going to be one where we are trying to see a bit more of this again. Two dominant programs, Battle of the Titans. blue blood in Duke coming in. Ranked right now number 8. We are number 3. And they are still lacking a little bit in the height department. The only loss they have, I believe you just pulled it up there, Maryland.
Maryland, 85-80.
Yeah, so close
Tightly
loss.
Contested game.
Close
the whole
loss.
way through. Yeah.
Not going to be a huge knock on them. Maryland's a very solid program. Now they are going to be coming in here with very good squad, but still not bringing that big factor of height. So I'm still going to be really keeping an eye on how are we doing here. Other than just knocking down our shots, how is that game going to be going on in the paint? Are we going to be forcing our will a little bit down there? Are we going to continue to see the growth of Joyce Edwards' game? Are we going to continue to see Ashlyn Watkins being Ashlyn Swatkins down there, down low, and Chloe Kitts still continuing to do what she does and just have those really good active hands on defense. Even Raven Johnson as well. She could be very gritty. She could be very quick on the defensive end. And it's still going to be a bit more of not having to always just put your hands up, trying to defend them and be, like a tree, trying to reach up towards the basket. But
physically imposing.
Yeah, sometimes it's a little bit more down low, with the steals, with just trying to steal the ball and slap it away without having to sky towards the bucket. So that's going to be something big to see with a lot of their best players. Honestly, I've looked at the height, and this is still something I don't want to harp on too much because height still only factors into the game so much. But I just want to keep seeing if it really is going to be a determining factor of how well we do against really good teams and top 10 programs that don't have that really big size differential against us or either right on the same level with height. But their 2 top scorers right now, from what I've seen, Ashlyn Jackson is one of them. She is a junior from China, Texas. China, Texas. There you go. Ashlyn Jackson. She is a guard, and she's put in 15 points a game. Okay, so she's being really, really solid. She's 6 feet tall. Still got good height in her own regard. And then Reagan Richardson, another guard, another senior for the Blue Devils. She's 5'11". She's from Charlotte. She's pouring in 15 points a game. Not anything too crazy with rebounds, though. They definitely are playing a little bit more with speed, with small ball. Both of them are shooting about 50% from the field. So nothing crazy in that regard. They just seem to have a pretty good rotation overall. But this is something that South Carolina can handle. If they're going to be trying to drive to the basket a little bit more, focus a bit more on mid-range, this is definitely something that could be playing into South Carolina's bread and butter. Trying to get into the teeth of our defense, that's going to be tough for them. If they are trying to go that route and they're not going to be able to knock down threes, that might be really big for them. And just keeping an eye on that since they're on the road, and I really do anticipate us to have a raucous crowd on hand. We should. We definitely should. That's definitely going to help to throw off some of their field goal percentage and shooting. And that's definitely going to play into the favor of South Carolina. So even though this is going to be a very talented Duke team coming in here, I definitely like how it can play into what South Carolina brings to the table with no big physically imposing mismatches slated for this one.
Yeah, and I think the keys to the game are pretty much going to be the same as we've been saying since we started talking about the season. It's just got to start hot.
Yeah.
You can't. That has been, I haven't been watching nearly as long as I'm sure some of the people listening.
Obviously, yes. I said some people have been fans for decades.
Yeah,
and there's some rough years.
But
we're spoiled, but we're still enjoying it.
Oh, I'm enjoying it. It's just the one thing that has kind of been frustrating for me to see has been those slow starts. So those last 2 games where it's kind of fixing itself, it's like, okay, you're making these adjustments that are important, but you have to keep it going because you're not always going to get these doubling up of opponents like you had against Purdue. I highly doubt that you're going to get that against Duke and against TCU. You're not going to just wipe the floor with everybody, but if you want to, you're going to have to start hot, and that is something that's going to be not just for these games, but the rest of the season and beyond. Just you can't let these slow starts bite you because that's the reason they lost UCLA, it seems.
It's a blueprint that works for South Carolina. They already have had several instances of it, and it's just something you have to try and overcome. You need to try and settle down when you're starting games, not falling behind, and not just making dumb decisions with shots. Just make good decisions out on that floor where, of course, you're trying to shoot the ball. using the glass, getting to the paint, yes, but not getting these little floaters or just trying to flip the ball up towards the rim, which happens from time to time. And I understand that, even though I'm not someone that, played any basketball at a higher level other than middle school and a little bit early in high school.
Local basketball court.
and of course, I love playing pickup and everything. And, we... And it's not something in a professional sense where we focus too much on our shot selection because we're just having fun out there. But when you're in a hotly contested game, you need to make sure that you are trying to do your best to be mindful of the shots you're putting up, especially starting out the game, because it just goes to show that. And this is something that could change. This could be very different by the end of the season, but this is a narrative that has already plagued this team, and it almost bit us against Michigan. It really bit us against UCLA, but even just showed a little bit of weakness against a team like Clemson, who is very inferior to South Carolina. And that's just something, as we're going to be going on to the season, they need to clean up. That you can have the capacity to beat and definitely even coast potentially later in games, even to top 10 programs, if you could just start the game on a hot streak, if you're making good shot selections, running good plays early, and not letting yourselves get frazzled, not letting the other team build that momentum, because South Carolina is a team with a lead that is very, very hard to chase down. And once anyone loses confidence against us, that's just about done. And that's something I've seen from a good handful of games already this season, and I do think that that is a blueprint that can continue, no matter what the team, other than UCLA. It just seems like they might be really a bit of our kryptonite right now, just with the way that game went. But that could have been a bit of a fluke. Perhaps we play them on a neutral floor, they play them in South Carolina. It's a very different scene. You don't know. You got to make sure that you separate these games on an individual basis. You got to treat these games like they're in a vacuum by themselves. And the next time you play and see them, and they could easily see them in the NCAA tournament this year, it could be completely different. That's why it's a whole season, and that's why you have to make adjustments, and why also, as we discussed before, you can't just get caught up with the stats and the happenings of one game, because it's a long time, and March and April are truly what matters when you look down the road.
It really is. I mean, that's when, obviously, you want to be hot. You don't want to be super hot. Obviously, you want to be winning games early in the season, but you really want to get hot at the right time. That's when championship runs are made. It's the right team at the right time getting hot. But I think a thing that they need to harp on, because I don't know if you can always start out, lightning in a bottle, just nailing threes from across the court, but
not always going to happen. But we have some of the players that can do it if we get Tessa and get Pow out in space, because they are just such good pure shooters. But still, it doesn't mean you have to hoist threes. There could easily be avenues you find in the paint, especially when you're not going up against teams that their tallest player is under 6'3", 6'4". We can exploit that because we have the just better skill set of players, a little bit more muscle down there, a little bit more of that height, and just players like Chloe Kitts and Ashley Watkins can impose their will a little bit more, whether they're starting or whether they're going to be on the bench. And that's just something down the road you have to, of course, try and see what's going to work early and try to do that. If it isn't broke, do not fix it. Just keep trying that to start the game and then see if you can really build that lead for the later phases. And that's just going to help you so much more in the long run, to have a little bit of less stressful games and having to go for a really hard four quarters with other top 10 programs, because it's a long season. So you want to be able to have some big wins when you can, and they've already shown that they can.
Yeah, they obviously have the capability to blow out these opponents who are not just teams on a schedule trying to fill up the season. They're very clearly very talented programs, very great programs, and you're still just going out there almost doubling up Purdue, handing Iowa State a very convincing loss.
Yeah, 40 points.
Oh, yeah, 40 points. 40 points, almost complete, like you said, almost complete doubling up of Purdue. So you don't need, in these games, not every game is going to be like that. Obviously, we saw it with UCLA, and you don't need to be on top of it every single time, because a win of 10 points and a win of 1 point and a win of 40 points, it is just one strike in the column each time. As long as you find ways to win, that is all that matters. And I think one thing that they really need to do is that you don't need to be nailing everything in these early shots or in these starts. Just need to not get in your own way, which is something we saw at UCLA. UCLA had a slow start too. We just had a worse start than they did because they were able to eventually pull away. And you just have to make sure that you're doing what you can, and obviously you're not going to have these huge leaps right at the beginning. Just find ways in these important games, in these ranked games, like against UCLA, what we could see against Duke and TCU, keep yourselves in it until your bread and butter comes together.
Yeah, you don't want to forget how good of a team that you are. You still need to be humble. You don't need to be showboating or need to be chirping on social media, but this is definitely a team that has the ability to run the table from here on out. There's still going to be some tough tests along the way. There are going to be teams that could still rise to the occasion. There could be another slow start or two in the future. You don't know, even as you look towards March and April, but that is a long ways away. We still got to fight to get there, and there's going to be a lot of talent that we still got to fight and power through until we get to that point of the season. But it really is just that matter of, hey, giving yourselves that good spark early so you're not continuing to try and just go forward and try and climb that hill and try to be fighting that upward battle. And also, if you can try to build a lead, especially against good caliber opponents, and maybe you're trying to get just a little bit more of your bench players' time too, because that could pay dividends down the road, and see where you could have a bit more production that maybe you would not have had the opportunity to see before, because you're trying to get, of course, your starters out there, and you have your key bench players that you know that are going to get minutes, but just to see the entire roster out there, trying to get everyone some playing time, see if they could find a spark, especially if it is against a ranked program, because that's awesome if you could continue to blow out other ranked opponents and still get your bench players some meaningful minutes and they can actually show a little bit more of their stuff. It's just only going to be helpful getting further and further into this long basketball season. That is a grind. You're almost playing 40 games, and it's a lot more of an intense and physical sport with the way that women's basketball has grown and with more eyeballs on it. It's all good things. It's all great things, and we love to see it. And just one great example is going to be a lot of eyeballs on this nationally televised matchup against Duke, and that is going to be really, really good to watch. I'm going to try to catch a little bit of it before I have to go to bed. I'll probably take a nap on Thursday so I could at least catch most of the game on TV, then go to sleep, and then I got to wake up at 3 in the morning, and it's going to be a whole ordeal. But it's going to be worth it because it is a fantastic matchup that I don't want to miss. So I'll try to make up for my sleep elsewhere, Adam. I'm sorry you have to work until 9. That's a little tougher.
Yeah, at the very least, I'll be able to keep up with it at least until I can get home and toss it on the television. But on the bright side of the schedule, after these two hell matches that they have coming up.
TCU is good.
Yeah.
Their star, Haley Van Lith, she has been really lighted up, and that's going to be another fun game to break down after this Duke game, hopefully with more positive vibes from us. But that's, not going to be too simple, especially with that one being on the road. And that's, honestly, Adam, where we're talking about more of these games, where it just gets a little bit tougher. Because on a neutral floor, I would say that South Carolina definitely has a really great edge over most programs, albeit UCLA still have that hurdle to try and leap over. And they are obviously a team that can give South Carolina fits. You saw the recipe that they used, and it was successful. It didn't really matter to me whether they were home like they were or if that was a neutral court game. They are definitely a program that can give South Carolina fits. But otherwise, I really do like our chances. But on the road, it's definitely going to be a bit of a struggle, especially if you actually have that crowd support, which you're seeing more and more of. One thing when you really look back to some of these games, especially going back to last decade, and this is just something that I just love to toss in there just to see the growth of the fan interest, whether it was the Iowa games and the Caitlin Clark days where they were just filling and packing up that stadium in Iowa City or arena in Iowa City. But it's not even teams like that. It's plenty of programs that are really starting to just get just more and more fans and more interest in the sport. And they had them before, but it's even more of a capacity now. Schools like Tennessee that have had that history. Schools like Notre Dame, TCU, of course, really seeing that growth. North Carolina, Duke, your typical blue bloods that still would have fans go to the games, but you're just seeing more of that excitement now. LSU as well. And it's really, really fun to see just people getting hyped, getting into it, whether it's ESPN or Fox Sports or CBS, whoever is broadcasting games, just seeing the passion and actual intensity of fans with outfits and everything, and face paint, all that stuff. Just planning that out, saying, you know what, I'm getting up for this game. I'm going out there. I'm showing my support as a fan, and I'm going to be out there helping to support my team, just like I would for any men's sport.
Yeah, like how a lot of fans will make a day of supporting their team. It's great to see them doing the same for this.
It is. I really, really love it, and South Carolina is a great example of that. We got the chance to go to a few games last year. Plan to hopefully go to a few more than that this year. And it's just great to see the support and the camaraderie and the sandstorm and the towels flying. And it's all great. And it's just a great testament to the sport. And we are just a great example of what other fan bases should be doing and can be doing, are doing, definitely. But I don't know if anyone matches up. I can't say this for certain. I'd have to see ticket stats, but I don't know if there is any other program in the country that does stack up to the season ticket sales that our women's program has had. It's crazy. Borderline selling out. Of course the lower bowl, but not a lot of seats left for games. Because they're all bought up by people. It's just so impressive, and that's why I said that before. If you're someone who wants to go to some of these games, you really might just have to buy resale tickets because that's all that could be available, other than just a general admission ticket to get into Colonial Life.
So, according to an article from ESPN published in October, it says South Carolina. This was by the Associated Press. Yeah. It says South Carolina is already on the way to leading women's college basketball in average attendance for an 11th straight season.
Yeah,
so it has been
makes sense.
Consistent, which is crazy to think about if you consider going back 11 seasons. Even when UConn was on that run, we were still top of the line in attendance.
They were really coming into their own, I believe, at that time. And Dawn, of course, has been with the program longer than that, and it's just been a steady growth, a steady climb, and ever since they started to get that interest from fans, and not just more of a general sense. There have been some fans that have been there since the beginning, for decades, as we discussed, but when that attention just really turned into a positive light of, South Carolina is actually just going to be a consistent program that is there, and these teams are going to be fun to watch, and we're going to have iconic players and memorable players and just great basketball to watch, and that's going to be something that's going to continue. Okay, I want to keep doing that. I want to invest my time and I want to invest my money in season tickets for this program. If you want to go to games, you might have to buy a ticket from me or one of my friends over here, because just the interest has not died down, and whether it is off of a championship season or just of a really great season in general, it's just awesome to see. And this is a product that is put out on the court that is going to be really, really fun to watch. And even though it's tough when you see a strength of schedule as high as South Carolina's is, and you're constantly playing top 25 or just top 10 teams. But you know what? It does make a great showing for fans. It gives you the opportunity to show off how good you are to the rest of the country, because you're getting just these national broadcasts. And that's just going to be something that's awesome to see, and that I am so happy that we keep getting more of this attention. And it's just going to continue. If they keep scheduling games like this, they keep staying consistent and talented, and just keep putting players out there that are going to put fans in seats and are going to be drawing people to their television screens or laptops or phones, streaming, whatever way you get to games or can watch games. There's just some can't miss moments that are starting to pop up more and more from the women's game, and a lot of them come from our program.
I think it's interesting if with this podcast and our racing one, Palmetto Pit Stop, it's two sports obviously on different spectrums, but
a little bit.
Well, I mean, like in terms of fan interest, with women's basketball it's been there, and then now just in recent years, especially, the interest has really started to grow, and we saw
it's exploded.
Really explode, and probably since the start of the 2020s, has just exploded, really. Yeah. And then you see sort of, not just like NASCAR, but like motorsports in general, same thing, but it went away for a while. We had like early like the late 90s, early thousands was prime motorsport time, and then kind of went away in the late 2000s, early in like 2010s. Now it's back on the rise again. Again, around like 2020, interest in motorsports coming back. So it is fun as a fan just to see these sports that you and I especially clearly enjoy talking about, clearly enjoy watching, getting the eyes on it that we feel like they deserve. And it's obviously it's exciting for us, but it has to be super rewarding for the people who put the blood, sweat, and tears into it every single time they're performing.
Yeah, and when you're focusing on fan attendance and interest, it's still something I've always been into. I remember even when I was just a little kid, my parents would take me up to Penn State, and we would go see the men's and women's basketball games. That was the Lady Lions at Penn State, and they only had usually a few thousand people at games. There was a lot of space in arenas, and that's still something that you do see to this day for some programs because there's still growth that needs to be had, especially for smaller schools, but it's on the rise, the interest is there, and to the point I made before, I really would love to see. I don't know if it's going to ever be a consistent thing. I really hope it is. I know it's going to be a little bit tougher for tickets to be had for people, but I would love a designated student section. I wish that was a thing for all programs, and that's something that could be marketed better or hyped up better. Giveaways and just to have that consistent student section for women's games. Why not? It's great to see, and it'd be awesome for the women's game. And it's just because the interest hasn't been high enough. A lot of schools haven't ever really felt the need to have a designated student section for women's basketball games. But maybe that's something that will change and that will become a thing. We'll see.
Yeah, the best part, I think, about all college sports, not just women's basketball, the best part of college sports is the passion that's there. You see it so much more in comparison between a college sport and then a professional sport. You see it especially with like kind of smaller colleges. You see that they'll still, these teams that don't expect to be competing for the national championship or anything, they'll still just pack arenas and pack stadiums. And then you go to the national level, the professional level, and it's like, our team's not too good this year. We're just, energy's going to die out. That's just how it goes. I think colleges really should, if they have the capability, take advantage of the passion that their students have, and especially with a program like South Carolina, where if you have a designated student section, and you know that they're going to be bringing energy, that could be an entirely different facet of the game. Us obviously, how intimidating the whiteout is to play in. These playing in the Big House in Michigan, the Horseshoe in Ohio State, all these places that are intimidating entering them, not even getting into the game, but having to play there. If going in to Death Valley at LSU is scary on its own, walking through the tunnel, imagine playing a game. Now imagine that's the same thing for women's basketball. You have to go face, however many seats are there, 18,000 seats in Colonial Life, just screaming at you the whole time with all that energy in a controlled confined environment like a basketball arena.
Well, see, and you're going to have that interest as well, just because the women's program is so good. It's just a matter of how many students are getting hyped up for that, and I wish it was more. I really, really do. It would be great to have a bit more of that support on the student side. It's definitely there. I just don't think it is there to the fullest capacity that it can, because you're still in conference like the SEC, still an area where football reigns supreme, and obviously the cockpit they still put on their own good show with the student section here at South Carolina. But there still are some that are a little bit bigger, a little bit more raucous, and they did really show up and show out this year, I will say. And it was easier because South Carolina put on an incredible season on the football side of things, which was so awesome to see. Sellers, oh my goodness, that was exciting. Just to again give a shout out to football. I will say, sad with the announcement tonight that they will not be making the playoff, though. That was essentially confirmed by ESPN, because the committee essentially said, and they did confirm this during the broadcast tonight, that any of the teams that are ranked below 12, they will not be moving. They will not be moving up from where they are. So basically, if you're 13 like Ole Miss or 14 like South Carolina was, you are out officially of the playoff, regardless of what happens in the championship games. And that's, again, a whole other can of worms, which, maybe I think we can just squeeze that in there. And I would actually like to talk about football, and maybe once they get into their bowl game and everything, we could do just a bonus podcast for that. But that is definitely a tough conversation to have because, the student section for South Carolina for football, they showed up this year. The fans, remained passionate. The defense, man, they showed up. Offense was starting to break out. Maybe Nick Harbor will get more playing time next year.
My college football 25 savior, Nick Harbor.
So, well, there's a lot of things to be excited about here in South Carolina. And, the football program is just one of them. And our women's basketball team still remain one of the biggest programs in the country to be excited about. And really, really good to be able to be talking about it. But just on to that point, it would be really cool one day to have just more of a designated student section and just more student interest in general in women's basketball. Don't worry, the townies have plenty of the interest. People in this state and region have plenty of an interest. You see plenty of fans out there in the range of, people in their 30s and 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, whatever. People that are not college students. But just to see more of that younger interest, and I'm not just talking about little kids either, just your college student crowd. It would be great to see, and I really would love to see just more of that grow because this team's been good for so long. Please support them. Support basketball just like you're supporting football, and students definitely do a good job supporting other teams like baseball and even soccer here. But just again, show up for your women's team, and perhaps just with that interest, there will be one day a designated area for fans and for students for the women's games, not just the men's games, and that's a blueprint that could be taken across a lot of different schools. I would just love to see that. Just definitely a point I wanted to make as we're talking about crowd atmospheres.
Yeah, maybe we'll see some improvement in the coming years, but I would absolutely love to see what kind of energy women's basketball can grow to have with this expanded presence in the sports world now.
Yeah, especially as South Carolina is still so good and that interest and passion is still there. Yes, I get it. It would take away some from seats. It would take away some seats from fans and season ticket holders, but you just cater to your students.
Yeah, the students are the biggest part. It's a college team. Like the students are the reason they're there. So I think if you're given this opportunity and your program is great, if you're a student, you should reward these students for supporting your team with an experience like that. Like when I was in Penn State, the student section of Penn State is like one of the biggest memories I have. It has so many memories of my college career is centered around the student fan experience.
See, that's what I mean. I'm trying to vicariously relive some of that here in South Carolina. That's been one of the best parts about becoming a Gamecock fan. It's given me a chance to just see some of that passion and energy again from people here and see it in a different light and be welcomed into a different fan base because, I do. I really, really miss that in my college days. And it is something that's nice to be able to carry on when I can visit up back home. I could attend games down here. And it is. It's just the camaraderie of it is great. And, the Gamecock fan base across all sports. It's fantastic. It's a fantastic group of people that happy to be a part of. Glad I picked this team, not that one from the upstate.
I never heard of them.
Yeah, I don't either. Some gross orange mass. I don't know.
Who would choose orange as a uniform color? It's me.
I don't know. Either way. So, Duke Adams, who we got coming to town. Reminder again, that is this Thursday, December 5th, 9 p.m. ESPN, nationally televised game. And prediction time as we're getting to this one. Just looking over the matchup again as we're seeing some of the size differential. That's not really going to be a factor. Duke, pretty good shooting team. Their top scorers, as we also went over, shooting around 50%. Not anything too astronomical. And if they're not going to be hitting their threes and we're really going to be getting to them, hopefully, come on, people, hopefully, with some good crowd noise and just a little bit of that disruption, with a top 10 game in Colonial Life Arena, better be packing that place. I don't care if it's late. Unless you got work like me, if you're a big fan, you best be going to that game. And I think with all of that and the factors of Watkins and Kitts being able to command things in the paint and just the active hands that we have on defense and more of the comfort that we can have scoring on our home floor, I think that's all going to be wrapped up in a bit more of a game that's pretty well for us. We're coming off the get-right games with Thanksgiving and Saturday against Purdue, and I think more of that will continue. Duke should pose a bit more of a challenge. They're a little bit more speedy, a little bit better shooting teams, and even with it being a road atmosphere, they're not traveling too far down from North Carolina. I still think, though, that South Carolina is going to be taking this game. I'll have a similar prediction to the Iowa State game. I'm thinking it might be a little bit more accurate for this game, but we'll see what goes on. I'm going to say South Carolina takes this one by 15 points. I do think that they have the ability to, especially being at home and just really getting things on track, figuring themselves out, trying to get better and better with each game. So, 15-point victory, I say, for South Carolina. Sending those Blue Devils back to hell. Or North Carolina, whatever. What do you think, Adam? What do you think?
So I've been saying it all season. Just it all depends on the way you start. They say it's not the way you start, the way you finish. Unfortunately, that the season so far has been the way you start and how you finish.
Both could be good.
Yeah. So I say if we get off to a good start, I'm feeling a little cocky, no pun intended. Give me at least 20.
Okay.
But if we are struggling, it's going to be much closer. I think it'll be a 5-point win for the Gamecocks.
So with a quick start, 20.
But with a quick start, 20.
All right.
So I feeling myself a little today. I think if they come out and show like, hey, we're South Carolina, we're going to take this top 10 matchup like we have our last few games, I think it won't be as stressful as it's been. But if you can't get a hot start, be prepared for a bit of a back and forth, blow for blow.
And that's going to be something that could still be a factor, but I do think that the crowd atmosphere, just being a home game, should really help you push past that. And if you do just hit a couple shots early, you already start to get the crowd into it early, then it could end up being a very long day for Duke, despite them being a very good team. And this would be great to see because with it being a potential second win over a top 10 team from North Carolina, already dispatching the Wolfpack earlier this year, that would just be another great win for South Carolina to show, hey, we are the women's basketball state of the Carolinas, so let's keep that rolling, everybody. And thank you again for being here. This is the Ladies First podcast. I am Tony, here with Adam, raised as gentlemen, so of course we do know it is ladies first. And we will catch you next time with another big preview coming up. We got TCU right after this one against the Blue Devils.